This is Combat Mania on the Undetermined Podcast Network.
You're listening to Combat Mania, a cheap seat sports production part of the Undetermined Podcast Network. It's episode number 1. I'm Tom Albano, and I want to thank you all for tuning in to the premiere episode, the pilot episode, whatever you want to call it, of this newest podcast from the Undetermined Podcast Network. You may recognize my voice from the Unspoken Podcast, and I want to assure you, before we get into anything, that I will be staying with that podcast, talking sports like baseball, football, everything else, along with Nick Federa and occasionally Nick Morgeson. But this is going to be a new endeavor of mine. As a big MMA and pro wrestling fan, while also dabbing into the world of boxing, I'll be here with you talking and discussing the latest news, latest happenings, and events in the world of combat sports. So how this show will work is that each combat sport will have its own little section of sorts. The number of talking points in each section will depend and vary from week to week depending on, what's going on in the world. Hell, even the section order is going to change weekly. So without any further ado, let's just get right into it. Let's dive right into what's happening in the world of MMA. UFC 215 took place this past Saturday night from the Rogers Place in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Going into this week, we thought the main event would be Demetrious Johnson versus Ray Borg for the UFC Flyweight Championship. And there was a lot of historic implications there because, of course, if Ray Borg won, the consecutive title defense streak of Demetrious Johnson would be snapped. On the other hand, if Demetrious Johnson won, he would have sole possession of the record for most consecutive title defenses in UFC history. Right now, he's tied with Anderson Silva with 10. We were thinking that the answer would come last Saturday, but of course that did not happen. On Thursday night, late Thursday night, Ray Borg was forced out of the card due to a illness of sorts. We don't know for sure what the illness was, if it was weight-related or not. According to a health consultant at Perfecting Athletes, where Ray Borg went for a health consultation, supposedly it didn't have anything to do with weight. Ray Borg released a statement departing from Perfect Athletes, parting ways with them, but still no real, word on what the hell it was that caused him to pull out. But the show had to go on, and so the main event became the Women's Bantamweight Championship match between Amanda Nunes and Valentina Shevchenko. And you would think maybe, it hurt UFC 215 a little, combined with the fact that a big heavyweight showdown with title implications in Junior Dos Santos versus Francis Ngannou was also canceled after Dos Santos was flagged for an out-of-competition drug test, a pre-fight drug test, potential violation that occurred, I want to say, August 18th. That's when he was forced out. So you'd think that would, hurt the card a little. And while it hurt, star-wise, I don't think it really, hurt too much. I thought it was still a good card, UFC 215. Let's get right into a main event. Amanda Nunes, Valentina Shevchenko. Very technical main event. Very, very technical. If you're a big brawling fan, if you like seeing, knockouts or all-out wars, you wouldn't be seeing it in this fight. Nunes kind of played it, safe, trying to conserve her energy in the events that it would go all 5 rounds, and it actually did. In fact, of course, Nunes and Shevchenko fought in March 2016 at UFC 196, and that actually did end up going all 5 rounds, with Nunes winning by decision. And since then, Nunes had won the Women's Bantamweight Championship at UFC 200, then defeated Ronda Rousey in 46 seconds. And so here we are. This fight was, of course, originally supposed to happen back in July, UFC 213, pushed back to this event because of Nunes pulling out on the day of UFC 213 due to illness. So, as I was saying, a very technical main event. I like brawling, the brawl fights with the big knockouts and everything, knockdowns more than this kind of stuff, but I do have a little bit of an appreciation for the technical side of MMA. But I know there are those of you out there who are like big, I want to see somebody get knocked the hell out kind of fans. And for you guys who may not have enjoyed this fight, I mean, Rogers Place didn't take too well to this main event. But of course, combined with a lot of alcohol, a lot of waiting, some things can happen. It even got to the point where I think in the 5th round, I heard a chant of like, "Let's go Oilers." And I think the commentary team pointed that out as well. But it was a technical main event. As I said, Nunes was trying to conserve energy. Valentina Shevchenko trying to, engage or at least do what she could without being taken down as such. And the judges' scorecards were all over the place. The first judge gave the bout to Shevchenko 48-47. Second judge gave it to Nunes 48-47. The third judge gave it to Nunes 48-47. So you had a bit of controversy here in regards to who exactly won the fight. Shevchenko was clearly upset, thinking she had done enough to, get the win. And there's a whole debate amongst the MMA community after UFC 215 about, was Shevchenko robbed? Did Shevchenko do enough, to defeat the champion? Should they have a third fight? All that. Both fighters in the first round, they were just, it was the feel each other out kind of round, as it really... There are quite a few MMA fights with boxing, the first round is typically, let's feel each other out. Let's get a feeling of, what you're going to do. And then Shevchenko did push up the pressure in the second. Nunes seemed to take everything fine, though. But Shevchenko, of course, was producing more. Shevchenko continued into round 3. It was weird. Shevchenko, would engage and then she would disengage and engage and disengage. At least that's how I felt it was. And, maybe she was trying to avoid, getting hit by something from Nunes. But, like a powerful shot like Tate and Rousey fell victim to. But, as I said, Shevchenko had, gone the distance with Nunes before. So I knew if somebody could take a punch, if somebody had a good chin amongst those people, it would be Valentina Shevchenko. And Nunes actually got warned by referee John McCarthy for outstretched fingers. Edmonton is under the new unified rules of MMA, so you can't have the fingers outstretched. It has to be, closed fist or the fingers pointed up at the sky. You can't have, your fingers outstretched towards your opponent. McCarthy warned her, and I believe towards the end of the 3rd round said if she did it one more time, a point would have been taken away. So, there's your first debate right there. What happens if McCarthy does take a point away? Then it becomes 47-47, 47-47, and then Shevchenko 48-46 on the 3rd scorecard. So that would be a majority draw. So in that case, Nunes still would have retained her title, but controversy would still be there of sorts. If Nunes should have had a point taken away, and should Shevchenko again be the champion. So there would have been more of, there needs to be a third fight. 4th round was okay. It was typical back and forth, nothing really noteworthy in my opinion. Though the damage had been done. You could see on both fighters. Like Nunes, her nose was a little busted up. Shevchenko, her belly was pink. It's like when you smack a body part so many times that you see the skin go from it turns into just pinkish color. I don't know what you call it, but basically, it's the effect of taking body blow after body blow. And then Shevchenko had a cut on her leg. I'm not going to call it a gruesome cut. I'm not going to call it small paper cut either. It was coming out. Blood was coming out, but didn't seem to, affect her too much. Nunes then spent the 5th round trying to get takedowns, and she actually ended up getting 2 takedowns, one of them coming after Shevchenko missed a knee. It was like one of those bad knees. So somebody compared it to a shot that Weidman attempted when he was defending the title against the middleweight title against Luke Rockhold. And, of course, those MMA fans who know what happened in that fight, Chris Weidman ended up paying a big price for that. Luke Rockhold taking him down and ending up finishing Weidman in the 4th. That was, I believe, in December 2015. But going back to this fight, so it seemed like to most people it was the takedown attempts that won Nunes this fight. And I can see the point in that. But I can see Shevchenko's argument, of I won on the way of, I won the round of sorts. But I can also see where some fans say Shevchenko didn't do enough. I mean, that's the thing. We're talking, the UFC, the unified rules of MMA in their 10-point must system, the 10-9, 10-8 system. But could you imagine what this fight would have been like under Pride rules? Now, that's something a little different. How would you, I want to know... I wonder how this fight would have been scored on a Pride level, because those of you who don't know, when Pride FC, Pride Fighting Championships were around, they did not do the 10-point must system. The judges in Pride scored the bout as a whole, meaning it wasn't, okay, you won the first round, you won the second, you won the third, therefore person A, you win because you won 2 out of 3 rounds. You could, go the first half of the fight and, do just enough to get the win like you would in a UFC 10-point must scoring system kind of out. But in the second half of the fight, if you got your ass handed to you, like if your opponent did twice as much damage to you as you did to them in the first half, you probably lose the fight because you're judging the fight as a whole of sorts. So... that's interesting. Shevchenko thought she won 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 5th. The judges' scorecards were all over the place, and I believe I heard one judge had given Nunes the 2nd round, which gave her the win, which is where I'm inclined to say, if that's true, because I didn't check the judges' scorecards, then I might be willing to agree with Shevchenko, and she probably should have won the fight. But the 2nd round... I mean, here's the thing. The 2nd round I'll give to Shevchenko. The 3rd round I'll give to Shevchenko. The 5th round I'm giving to Nunes. The first round, I guess I would have to go to Nunes as well. Because, I don't think, there was just nothing going on in that first round. So I feel like in that case... you got to go with the champion because that's more of a draw. Meanwhile, in the 4th round was pretty even. So I would have said, it was the 4th round that possibly could have done it, if I was scoring the bout. But once that other judge put Nunes in as a winner of a 2nd, that kind of changes things. So I can see both fighters' points, and especially I can see Shevchenko's points. Maybe they need a 3rd fight. I don't know. That's not my call. Although, as much as they just fought, so I would like to see somebody else try to challenge Nunes before. I would have said, Sarah McMahon if she had defeated Ketlin Vera, but after that loss to Ketlin Vera on that preliminary headliner, I guess I'm with the whole rest of the MMA community in saying you got to give it to Raquel Pennington now. She is like the only legit number 1 contender in the UFC women's bantamweight rankings. So let me actually look up the rankings for the UFC women's bantamweight division and how they ranked everybody. Now, as of the moment that I am reading this, Amanda Nunes, of course, champion, still lists Valentina Shevchenko as number 1 contender. That's obviously going to go down. Holly Holm, they list as number 2. I don't know if I'm ready to give Holm another shot yet. I mean, you had the women's title, bouncing around after, after Holm beat Rousey in November of 2015. I want to say that was UFC 193. But I don't think, she's ready for that yet. I mean, she ended up on a big losing streak, 3 straight fights, and needed a rebound bout. So, I got to give Holm another 1 or 2 wins before I can say, Nunes should fight Holm. So Holm is out, Shevchenko is out. Ronda Rousey is probably retired. At this point, I don't think she ever fights anyone again, so she's out. I apologize if any of you heard a loud, do-do-do, one of those iMessage things. Friend messaged me, so didn't hear. If you heard that, I apologize, and if you didn't hear that, oh, well, aren't I a jackass? So let's see, Juliana Pena. I don't know. Didn't Juliana Pena lose her last fight? Yeah, she lost to Valentina Shevchenko in January. That's why Shevchenko got the shot. So I don't know if I'm ready to give it to Pena. I think Pena also needs 1 or 2 fights like Holly Holm. So I got to give it to Raquel Pennington. Because Sarah McMahon would be number 6. Pennington, as of right now, as I'm reading this, is number 5. So McMahon is out. Rousey's out. Shevchenko's out. Holm not ready yet. Pena not ready yet. Pennington's the only viable contender, I feel, now for Amanda Nunes. But let's get into the rest of the card for UFC 215 just quickly. Rafael Dos Anjos, Neil Magny in the co-main event. Dos Anjos picking up a first-round submission victory. Big thumbs up to Dos Anjos. He's now won 2 straight fights at welterweight. He struggled a bit at lightweight towards the end of his lightweight run. He had trouble making the 155 limit, and he was not in good fighting condition when fighting Andy Alvarez, in which he lost the title to Alvarez, and then when he lost to Tony Ferguson last November. So it's good to see Dos Anjos, is recovered, his body's better, and, now maybe he can be a viable welterweight contender. Flyweight, Henry Cejudo, Wilson Reyes, 2, former challengers to Demetrius Johnson looking to get back in there, and Cejudo with a nice knockout. It was nice, lightning quick. I had to, replay the footage to actually see what the hell had happened. So, big thumbs up to Cejudo. Dos Anjos and Cejudo, double big thumbs up, both deserving of their performance of the night bonuses, I feel. Ilir Latifi getting a decision win over Tyson Pedro. The opener of the pay-per-view, Jeremy Stephens, Gilbert Melendez. I was worried about Melendez after, taking the shots to the leg, and Melendez's leg, for those of you who didn't see, it looked pretty bad. It didn't look, bleeding bad. There was a nice bump or something, like something clearly was wrong with his leg, but he was able to tough it out and fight Stephens to a unanimous decision. Melendez's toughness, I got to give it up to him. He's one tough son of a bitch. He doesn't have a good record in the UFC since coming over from Strikeforce, but credit to Melendez. Jeremy Stephens, who the fuck is that guy? I'll tell you what he is. He just put in a nice case of, he is possibly the hardest hitting 145-pounder right now in that UFC division. Stephens looks like he's on the rise. I don't know if you give him the next title shot against Max Holloway. I think maybe he's also in the 1 or 2 more fights club before we can officially give him a title shot, but that was a really impressive performance by Jeremy Stephens. That fight ended up being fight of the night, and I could see where they're coming from with that. I might also have to agree with that statement. Also, UFC 215, the night of the upsets, by the way. On the preliminary card, Ketlin Vieira defeating Sarah McMahon, as I mentioned. Sarah Moore's taking down Ashley Evans-Smith. You got a nice performance from Alex White defeating Mitch Clark in the opening of the Fox Sports prelims, and Mitch Clark announcing his retirement in the cage right after that fight. So congratulations on your retirement, Mitch Clark. Hope the best to all to you. Hope everything goes well in retirement. Thumbs up. Respect. Cajun Johnson in the very first prelim bout, the very first battle of the card on the early prelims, a nice knockout of Adriano Martins in the third round. Going back to TV preliminary bouts, this featherweight bout between Rick Glenn and Gavin Tucker. That fucking poor kid, Tucker, man. He did not deserve the damage that had been taken. You can debate about the Stevens-Melendez fight and how it should have been stopped. Well, that Glenn Tucker fight really, really should have been stopped. The poor Tucker's face was practically unrecognizable after that fight. And for some reason, that referee decided, to let the fight go on. Well, it should have been stopped early in the third. Early in the third, maybe late in the second. That fight should not have gone on. Why did that fight go on? Why did the referee make Tucker take all of those freaking unnecessary shots? Unfreaking real. He did not have to take all those shots. And, credit to Rick Glenn, he didn't exactly want to hurt Tucker, but the referee wasn't exactly calling a fight and, saying keep going. Or the referee wasn't saying keep going, but it's when you're the referee and, you're not doing anything, it's what do you do? I don't know whether or not, to blame the corner for not throwing in a towel, but, what if the referee didn't see the towel? That's happened before. There was an early Bellator, I believe it was Bellator 66. Eddie Alvarez was fighting somebody. Alvarez was, doing the ground and pound on Alvarez's opponent's corner, threw in the towel, and the referee didn't see it because he's too busy looking at, the fighters, the ground and pound, judging when it was appropriate to stop the fight. So, even if the corner had thrown in the towel, what the hell was the referee supposed to do if he didn't see the towel? That's the thing. But the referee should have definitely stopped the fight. And, the judges' scorecards reflected the domination of Rick Glenn, 30-25, 30-24. And then one son of a bitch of referee rules at 29-27. Now, as I said, Edmonton passed, the unified MMA rules that were passed late in 2016 and went into effect this year. And that includes more, leeway for 10-8 scored rounds. So there was definitely some 10-8s, maybe even 10-7s with this fight. So with Glenn Tucker, so 30-25, 30-24 sounds good. Where the hell does 29-27 come in? That's what I'm trying to figure out. So the fact that Glenn didn't get all 30 points means the referee probably saw one round in favor of Tucker. So I'm trying to let's say, for example, Tucker gets the first round, so that's 10-9 right there. So does he do 10-9 in the second round? That's 19-19, and then probably a 10-8. Yeah, 10-8 third round. So I mean, maybe under the old, if we're going the old rules, the old unified rules of MMA, maybe, but, I think both the second and third round were 10-8s, if not 10-7s. So, I don't know what that judge was doing. Who the hell scores that 29-27 with freaking, scores like 30-25 and 30-24? And there was this Twitter account, it's about the UFC scorecards or whatnot, and they pointed out a unique history fact. Apparently this is the first time in UFC history where one fight there was a 30-24 and one of the scores did not start with 30 to something, whether it would be 30-27, 30-26, something like that. Instead it was a 29-27. Again, as I said on my personal Twitter account, who the fuck scores that 29-27? I don't know. But anyways, it was a good card, and you would think even with Demetrius Johnson's fight being pulled and Dos Santos Nagano being pulled, that this card would have suffered. But actually, they managed to produce some good numbers, UFC. I believe the crowd was sold out at UFC 215. The Rogers Place was completely sold out. Yeah, 16,232, generating a gate of $2.03 million US dollars. US dollars, not Canadian dollars, even though they were in Canada. Apparently, one of the UFC people post post-show said late walk-up sales made up for, the refunds that had to be issued because of the 48 hours where the 48 hours before the event, Borg pulled out of the fight because of the illness. So there's that. So yeah, I thought it was a pretty good card, even with the 2 cancellations. I thought for what they were able to, produce, fine. I thought it was fine. Fine show. So next week we got UFC on Fox Sports 1, UFC Fight Night. I guess this is going to be the UFC's answer to Triple G and Canelo, the boxing match. We'll get into that a little later. Luke Rockhold in the main event of that fight, card, taking on David Branch. This is going to be Rockhold's first fight since losing the middleweight championship to Michael Bisping in June of 2016. So this has been about a 15-month layoff for Rockhold. So let's see how much he's recovered and how much, can he rebound. He's taking on David Branch, a former WSOF champion who made his UFC debut back in May at UFC 211, defeating Krzysztof Jotko by split decision, so that one should be good. Co-main event for that card is going to be Mike Perry and Thiago Alves on a welterweight fight. Other fights will include Hector Lombard versus Anthony Smith, Gregor Gillespie against Jason Gonzalez, Sergio Moraes and Kamaru Usman, Anthony Hamilton versus Daniel Spitz, Uriah Hall in action against Krzysztof Jotko, and then, of course, in about 3 weeks, we have UFC 216. Main event is Tony Ferguson versus Kevin Lee for the UFC Lightweight Championship. You would think maybe the winner could face Conor McGregor in McGregor's return to the UFC, or the winner of McGregor versus whoever it is if McGregor, decides to fight, I guess, Nate Diaz or somebody like that for the title before a unification bout. Co-main event currently is going to be Fabricio Werdum versus Derek Lewis. We also got a women's flyweight match on that pay-per-view with Paige Van Zandt and Jessica Ai, Will Brooks in action, and we got quite a bit going on in that pay-per-view, and possibly, since Ray Borg's illness was, just an illness, it's not an injury or anything like that, potentially maybe Borg and Johnson could fight on this pay-per-view as the main event, which is why I said Ferguson Lee is currently the co-main event. I mean, you add that fight to this, and I think that looked like a pretty good card for the next pay-per-view, so should be exciting. Now, just a quick funny story, by the way. The story coming out very recently. Remember that whole UFC 202 press conference with Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz, speaking of McGregor? The one where they got into this bottle throwing matchup. Well, apparently a security guard by the name of William Pegg, who was at that press conference, is now suing Conor McGregor, stating that McGregor threw a can of what looked like Monster Energy off of the table and threw it at Diaz. And in the lawsuit, Pegg claims he was hit in the back by the can near his left shoulder. And apparently he incurred medical expenses totaling just under $5,000. And Pegg believes that he's entitled to at least $95,000. Really? I mean, come on. This is a classic case of, somebody going after a big celebrity, and just trying to get his money. Like, why come out of it now? It's been a year, first of all. Second of all, medical expenses just under $5,000, so he's believed to be entitled to $95,000 because of the significant strikes. This lawsuit's so stupid. Some people are just idiots. And as a quote on my wall says, in the words of the great Dr. Sheldon Cooper, one cries because one is sad. For example, I'm crying because others are stupid, and that makes me sad. This is a classic case of somebody, just trying to get one because, he's a celebrity, so I want as much money as possible. So that's going to get thrown out, so shut up, whoever you are. So that's going to do it for the MMA portion. of this podcast. Let's move on now to the world of boxing. So on the same night that UFC hosts UFC 215, there's this big WBC Super Flyweight Championship match between Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez and Srisaket Sor Rungvisai. Try saying his name 5 times fast. Roman Gonzalez, I believe, made history in September of last year. So about 12 months ago exactly, when he became the first fighter from Nicaragua to win world titles in 4 different weight classes. His mentor, Alexis Arguello, only did this in 3 weight classes. Roman Gonzalez won flyweight titles, light flyweight titles, middleweight titles, and super flyweight titles now. And he was 46-0 when he won the WBC Super Flyweight title last year. And then, back in March at Madison Square Garden, he met Srisaket Sor Rungvisai. Rungvisai got a knockdown in the first round of that fight, and Rungvisai came away with a narrow majority decision. The first loss in Rungvisai's career, and Rungvisai lost his Super Flyweight title. And so a rematch was set. A rematch was set for last Saturday night at the StubHub Center in Carson, California. Super Flyweight title on the line. Again, but this time, Rungvisai the champion, Chocolatito the challenger. And, well, that was not a good fight for Chocolatito. Chocolatito, last Saturday night, for the first time ever in his professional boxing career, finished. Lost before the final bell. He, for the first time ever, was knocked out. And while, it can happen, everybody has a bad night, this was not a good night for Chocolatito. It kind of is like a thing of did Chocolatito lose this fight? Did Rungvisai win? I mean, Rungvisai won, don't get me wrong, but Chocolatito Gonzalez was not the Chocolatito Gonzalez that everyone knew him to be last night. I mean, on Saturday night. So, for those of you who did not see the fight, slight little recap. The first round was basically all Rungvisai. Chocolatito did little to nothing in that fight. There was really... there was no controversy. Just put it to you this way about this fight. You can say there was controversy about their first fight, the narrow majority decision. But there was no controversy here. This fight was a freaking win for Rungvisai. So the first round, Roman Gonzalez was not really doing much. It was all Rungvisai with the production. Chocolatito seemed to be, hesitating a lot for some reason. Rungvisai was firing from the start. Chocolatito wasn't really doing much. Second round, Rungvisai was still in the driver's seat, though, Chocolatito improved a little. Both men fired away in the third round. The third round was probably the best round, other than the fourth and final round. So the third round was great. Both men were throwing down. Chocolatito probably, would have said, some would have said Chocolatito ended up winning that third round. Some may even say second and third. But the fourth was the one that matters. And here's what happened. So Rungvisai gets a knockdown early in the fourth round. This was on a couple of body blows. And it was pretty much a combination of body blows that ended with, I believe it was a right hook. It appears it was a right hook that knocked him down ultimately. And then, speaking of right hook, it was another right hook, just a one-punch right hook right on the button that finished off Chocolatito. Chocolatito, you see, was right on the button. You can see Chocolatito's face in that slow motion, It scrunched up, spit everywhere. And Chocolatito basically, he was on the ground, on the canvas, doing nothing, moving around, nothing. No moving around at all, rather. And basically, he was not getting up before 10. And he was on the ground for quite a little while before he moved his head a little. But really, there was not much he can do. He was out. He didn't know where the hell he was. It just looked terrible for Chocolatito. I mean, as I said, this guy, his respect is earned. I mean, he had history. He got, 4 weight class titles in 4 weight classes. First boxer from Nicaragua to do that. So you give his respect where it's due. But man, it just was not a good night. So I don't know, man. The question is, where does Chocolatito go from here? He has now lost 2 straight bouts to Rungvisai. One, you could say, was a bit controversial, but this one, you can give the it was a bad day excuse, but in the end, Rungvisai still landed quite possibly one of the best knockouts, of the year. Probably one of the most shocking knockouts of the year. Everyone entered this fight thinking, okay, Chocolatito, he was robbed the first time. He's going to get his revenge in this fight. And Rungvisai just ran through him. So, as much as this is not, the heavyweight or light heavyweight or middleweight scene, Rungvisai basically provided us with possibly 2 of the biggest shockers in boxing this year, defeating Chocolatito both times. You have to give credit where it's due. And Rungvisai probably is now the face of the super flyweight division. It's going to be interesting to see who can top him. But for Chocolatito, I don't know what's next. Do you try for a 5th weight class? Do you try to, get back to the contender spot? Because you're not going to get another title shot right away. It's going to be another few fights before you earn another shot at Rungvisai or whoever has the belt by that point. Do you drop back down to one of, your lower weight classes like the light flyweight or middleweight? It's tough now or regular flyweight actually. But it's tough to figure out what the hell's next for for Chocolatito. Rungvisai is going to have, I think Rungvisai is going to do well. Chocolatito, on the other hand, I don't know what's next for him. This is one of those points where it's difficult to say what the hell is next for him after this fight. So hopefully Chocolatito can figure out and get back on his feet. But big boxing match is this coming Saturday night. It's Triple G and Canelo. Gennady Golovkin, the unified middleweight world champion of boxing, meets Canelo Alvarez. A fight that's been at least a year in the making, maybe a couple of years for the bigger boxing fans. It's finally going to happen this coming Saturday night. T-Mobile Arena, I believe, is sold out, or at least it's pretty booked, and the hotels around the area are pretty stacked. Pretty booked as well. So this is a stacked fight. Of course, the McGregor-Mayweather fight was, by name power stacked, but seats didn't sell because, I guess they thought, people would be willing to pay a lot of money because of who was fighting, but, no. They had to, cover 2 sections, I think it was, they said, because not enough tickets were sold. And don't get me started on that pay-per-view refund shit. I actually talked about it with Nick Federa on a recent edition of the Unspoken podcast, so cheap chill plug, tune into that. Anyways, but going back to Triple G and Canelo, because this is, a definition of a real big boxing championship fight. Mayweather-McGregor was still entertaining, but this is going to be the big one that everyone wants to see. Gennady Golovkin in his last fight with Daniel Jacobs. Now, Gennady Golovkin is 37-0, for those of you who may not be too familiar on your boxing. He's 37-0, 33 knockouts. He was previously 36-0 with 33 knockouts. He had knocked out all but 3 guys in his career. I believe he had knocked everybody out. He did knock somebody out in, I think it was June 2008. That went to a decision. And ever since then, he was knocking out opponents left and right. Daniel Jacobs proved to be a challenge for Golovkin. Golovkin still won the fight, but Jacobs, he gave it his all, and he proved to be a test for Golovkin. So a lot of people gave Golovkin a bit of criticism for, how could you not knock out Jacobs? You're Gennady Golovkin. You're a knockout master. And Golovkin fired back recently saying, it was he gave a test. He gave me a test. I learned lessons from the fight with Jacobs, and I'm going to apply them when I face Canelo. I want to get the full quote of what he said because it was from a Yahoo article. Let me bring up that quote right now. Here it is. Also, for those of you who don't know how this fight became official, it was after Canelo Alvarez defeated Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. back in, I think it was May. But apparently this fight was supposed to happen last September, but Canelo decided against it and ended up moving down a weight class and challenging, I think it was Liam Walsh at that point. But after Canelo's victory over Chavez Jr., the two actually met in the ring, and the fight was officially announced. And Golovkin released a quote that was pretty much a bit of a head scratcher. To see, was he really, and it was Liam Smith, by the way, not Liam Walsh, that Canelo fought in September 2016. I apologize. It was for the WBO light middleweight title. But here's the full quote from Gennady Golovkin. I am not Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., and Canelo is no Danny Jacobs. There are no survivors in my fight. Boxing is a business. If I look great against Jacobs, if I knocked him out, I would not be getting in the ring with Canelo right now. Jacobs was a good fighter, and it gave me a good learning experience going 12 rounds. I'd never done that before. I felt amazing going 12 rounds for the first time. Jacobs gives everyone problems. And, I see the point that Golovkin is saying. I feel like those who are like, you Daniel Jacobs, you can knock him out. Golovkin does have the power, but, Jacobs, I thought, provided a good test. I think he provided one of the best performances, if not the best performance against Golovkin in terms of, all that Golovkin has faced. I thought it was a very, very good fight between Golovkin and Jacobs back in, it was in March. I think those people are discrediting Danny Jacobs. Maybe it's just the thing about, I'm from New York, so I'm rooting for New York fighters. But no, I thought he did great against Danny Jacobs. It was a loss. Against Gennady Golovkin, I think it was a loss. But, Danny Jacobs still had a hell of a fight, and that is true. I think that was the first time Golovkin won 12 rounds. I think the 2008 fight where, the last time he ended up going to distance, I think that was only a 10-round fight. So this is good just in case, Canelo actually ends up proving difficult for Gennady Golovkin. Do I think Golovkin will prove, Canelo will prove to be too much of a challenge for Golovkin? I don't know. But I find it interesting that he says, if I knock out Jacobs, Canelo doesn't accept the fight. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. And again, I think that's discrediting Danny Jacobs a little. I think Danny Jacobs is fine as a boxer. I thought he did well against Golovkin and freaking, I'm sorry, Danny Jacobs, why are you all giving Danny Jacobs that much crap? I thought it was still fine. And Golovkin, it's tough to say because I know Canelo did back out of that fight once. They were supposed to meet in September 2016 or whatnot, and Canelo chose elsewhere. And I remember Golovkin calling out Canelo all the time, saying, basically that Canelo chickened out. And I can kind of see where he's coming from because he ended up dropping weight class and going somewhere else and beating Liam Smith for a title. It's I can see where Golovkin's coming from that. A bit of a chicken out. Like he said, boxing is a business. So now that these two got one or two more fights under the belt, and now it's like the ultimate showdown. Here we go. Boxing was just on a mainstream scale with McGregor and Mayweather, and here we go. It's probably one of the biggest fights in recent history, at least on the middleweight division level. I feel bad that this fight isn't getting as much hype as it should because it was all stolen from them with McGregor and Mayweather. But if these guys end up breaking 3 million, I believe that's the hope, is that these guys can break 3 million buys. I'm all for it. I'll be very happy about that. Because I think boxing in 2017 has actually been very good. You produced a hell of a classic back in April with Anthony Joshua, Vladimir Klitschko. Now Triple G and Canelo is a fight that, a lot of boxing fans, want to see. So boxing has provided us with a lot of entertainment. McGregor-Mayweather, of course, that was a circus, but the fight still ended up going 10 rounds, so gotta give credit where credit's due. At least, it wasn't a one-round knockout or a knockout within 4 rounds that many were expecting. Many were expecting that fight to be a farce. And some can argue that it was still a farce, saying that Mayweather was carrying McGregor basically for that fight, but, I thought it was still fine. But Triple G vs. Canelo is this Saturday. I can't wait for it. I'm going to watch it. And if I do have to give a prediction, truth be told, I think this one won't go the distance, but I think it's going to go far. I think Golovkin will have to work for the knockout. I'm going to give Canelo some credit, but I will say he does get knocked out. I'm going to say round 9 or round 10, he's going to get knocked out. Or he's going to get stopped, and the referee's going to have to jump in or something. That's what I'm predicting. Round 9 or round 10, KO, TKO victory for Golovkin. That's going to be my prediction for the unified middleweight world title bout on Saturday night. I can't wait for that. All right, so that was a nice brief boxing talk there on 2 big fights in, one that just happened and one that's upcoming. So now let's dive into the world that is professional wrestling. Alright, so instead of talking and recapping about Raw, SmackDown, etc., and going through the shows and just rating each segment and stuff, I want to talk about a couple of things in the pro wrestling world that, got my attention. Those of you who were following Combat Mania Tuesday, it was me live tweeting about WWE 205 Live. And basically there was something about the main event of 205 Live that ticked me off. So I thought it was my first time watching 205 Live in a couple of weeks. So I was, pretty hyped. And the main event was a 5-way elimination cruiserweight match where the winner would face Neville at No Mercy for the championship. It was Grand Metalik, Cedric Alexander, Tony Nese, Brian Kendrick, and Enzo Amore. Now, everybody who's watching 205 Live and Raw and keeping up with everything could probably figure out that Enzo Amore was probably going to win the match. He was probably the favorite. And Enzo Amore did win. What I didn't like, however, was... Here's the thing. It was an excellent match. I was shocked. Because we talk about, 205 Live is a big flop, and it's struggling, and why is it after SmackDown Live and everything. 205 Live was actually a pretty good show, I thought, this week. You had Tozawa versus Drew Gulak, which was fine. I loved the freaking PowerPoint thing that was going on there. I actually thought that was pretty funny. TJP and Arya Daivari, I love TJP, so that's always something good. But then the main event was that 5-way elimination match, and I was giving it 2 thumbs up. I loved the freaking spots. I loved everything they were going with. They did one spot in particular where Cedric Alexander was on the turnbuckle, and Nese and Kendrick were trying to, double superplex him, and Grand Metalik gets his way onto the top of the turnbuckle, and they do like a tower death spot or whatever it's called, where Metalik flips himself over and everybody comes tumbling down. And then at the end, while Cedric Alexander lands on his back because of the, flip, he actually flips back and kicks up onto his feet. It was actually a very good spot. And I loved where they were going with Cedric. Also, there was this one spot where Nese hit an elbow on Metalik, and it caused Metalik to flop around like, as I love to say, he was flopping around like he was in a washing machine. Credit to that one to What Culture, when they were talking about Hulk Hogan and Shawn Michaels in 2005. But here's the thing. So Cedric goes on a roll and actually eliminates everybody, and it's like, oh wow, Cedric. And then Enzo Amore rolls him up from behind and gets the 3 count and wins. And Enzo Amore is also holding the tights. So Enzo Amore is also in this gimmick of like, oh, I don't train harder, I fight smarter. I mean, in some ways you could say that's probably a dig or a burial of sorts, some would say, because, supposedly Enzo has a lot of heat on him and yada yada. I don't think I need to talk about that because everybody should know about that by now. Here's where it confuses me. They're pushing Enzo as, big baby face, the guy who's going to try to dethrone Neville, dethrone the king of the cruiserweights. But he's pushed as a good guy, but this stuff of like, oh, I don't train harder, I fight smarter, and rolling up with the tights, the taking advantage, ultimate opportunist style, that's all heel stuff, bad guy stuff. So, is Enzo supposed to be face or heel? Like, I couldn't really tell, and this is what I tweeted out. I know the bad rap and disappointment of the Cruiserweight division, but that match was good until how Enzo won, and Enzo acts face style. I love Enzo. I love him on the mic. I will say that. But I don't like this fight smarter thing and him basically acting like a heel when he should be the face. The antithesis to Neville. Because Neville should be the guy who's like, I'm the king of the cruiserweights, and finishes with, everything dirty, basically. The way he, gouged Austin Aries' eyes at WrestleMania. The way he used the top rope and pretty much, hurt Akira Tozawa's junk when it came to retaining the Cruiserweight title at Great Balls of Fire. That stuff, I expect Neville to do because Neville is the bad guy. The finish, the gimmick, and it just felt like a burial of the Cruiserweight style. I know 205 Live hasn't been successful. I know everyone's like, as I said, oh, this is so boring now. They toned it down from the Cruiserweight Classic last year. They should just get rid of the Cruiserweight division. But the fact is that 5-way match was so goddamn good. It was just the match ending that kind of spoiled it. And as I said, as I tweeted out, word for word, and I know, maybe it's make Enzo look bad because backstage politics, yada yada, but come on, man. If you're going to have Enzo in the Cruiserweight division, at least let him compete in it. That's the other thing. They had Enzo Amore, I forget what happened, but he was like laying down a significant portion of the match. Basically, they did with what they did with Lesnar at Rumble 2015 in the WWE title match, and with Roman Reigns in 2016 in the Royal Rumble match. Minus being taken out on a stretcher. He was just lying there at ringside. I like Enzo and I'm fine with the Cruiserweights, but no matter how you look at them, that was just not a good way to end 205 Live. It just was not. And I really hope they're going to do something with Cedric because, maybe this is the thing where Enzo becomes, tweener, and maybe they insert Cedric now into the title picture because Cedric has just, he's been a workhorse. He had great showing in the Cruiserweight Classic, got him signed. He had this freaking feud with Noam Dar over Alicia Fox. I like Noam Dar, I like Cedric Alexander, but that feud was just, I don't know, I'm not much of a fan of like love triangles and stuff. That's those storylines in professional wrestling. Then of course Cedric gets injured, ends up missing WrestleMania, comes back, and now, he's been on fire ever since coming back. It's good to see Cedric back ever since he returned a month or two ago from that injury. And, credit to him. I can't wait to, he actually had a good I Quit match with Dar, too, as the feud ender. So, I gotta give credit to Cedric. And, I really want him to be in a title picture. I want him and Neville to have a feud soon. Or at least insert him into this Neville-Enzo feud to kind of balance out Enzo's character, because I was really confused by Enzo's character, what the hell he's supposed to be. And last topic for today is Global Force Wrestling. I'm sorry, Global Force Wrestling, that makes me laugh. Here's what I think other people have compared to TNA, GFW, whatever you want to call it now, Impact did this. But it's like the freaking cockroach in the apocalypse. No matter what the hell you do to it, it just doesn't die. And I don't want to see TNA, Impact, GFW, whatever you want to call it, close. But my God, it's like, shot after shot. It's like, when does this get put out of its misery? So, for those of you who don't know, Jeff Jarrett has been sent home. Jeff Jarrett, of course, the founder of Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, now Global Force Wrestling, and the Global Force Wrestling, that was acquired by what was TNA Impact Wrestling. Basically, Jeff Jarrett was forced out of the... This isn't the first time Jeff Jarrett has been forced home from a promotion, by the way. Remember, he was sent home around 2008, 2009 after the stuff happened with Kurt and Karen Angle. All that little drama there. And then he was sent home, or he parted ways with TNA, I think in 2014. That was because TNA Impact Wrestling was having its mass exodus of sorts. You saw the likes of AJ Styles go, Sting go, Chris Sabin, basically all the guys that made, Impact Wrestling what it was, at least when I was watching Impact, what it was. And everything was just going away. So now, apparently Jeff Jarrett has been sent home due to, I think it was personal issues was what they call it. According to Wrestling Inc., let me see. Hang on, I just got this ad, so I apologize. It was erratic behavior, that's what it was. Erratic behavior was... Apparently, Jarrett was set to host an NFL fantasy draft with members of GFW staff this evening, but that evening, when was that? September 5th, but that was nixed, and the staffers are hosting the draft at GFW offices instead. Just a fun little snippet there, because, football is back. Regarding what led to Lee's feeling is that unhappiness with Jarrett involved erratic behavior. They were not happy with the company's creative direction, and Jarrett being CCO. This situation built for months. The final tipping point was at the Triple Mania event, the AAA event down in Mexico, because Jarrett wasn't in the best shape. And apparently they were heckling fans and throwing tortillas into the crowd, which somewhat fit his gimmick in Mexico, but still had people talking. So apparently Jarrett was not blameless, but that this is a source to PWI Insider. Jarrett was not blameless, but there was also blame to be thrown in all directions. So, this is a mess. This company is just taking shot after shot, as I said. And now there was a report that purportedly Anthem, with how much they invested in the product, wanted out. They wanted out of GFW. They had to gut the Fight Network just to finance that company. But Anthem reportedly disputed those reports, saying, no, we put so much in it, so we're going to make it work. We're going to turn things around. I'm sorry, but the Impact Wrestling, GFW, whatever you want to call it, that we knew from before 2009 and before, from 2002 to 2009, it is not the GFW that has been since 2010. It's just not. It's sad. It really is sad to see how much that company has fallen. It was a true alternative to WWE, and it kind of still is, but to me it's just another indie fed. It's not the next potential big global company, what could have been a second WCW or ECW. Well, it was a second WCW of sorts, kind of still is, but not in a good way. And now reportedly there's also speculation there was a press release, we'll say that. And it's in developing stages. It's not going to be released next week. I don't know if it's going to be released next year. But there's a thought of basically a GFW version of the WWE Network that would show, GFW stuff, old episodes and shows from Impact Wrestling, back when it was, just Impact Wrestling, back when it's TNA and all that stuff. And basically they also want to try to get, indie feds on it to create not a Global Force Wrestling Network, but, like a Global Wrestling Network. I think that's what it's called. I mean, the idea of it sounds good on paper. I'd probably buy it, for the old episodes of Impact, the old pay-per-views, and the indie stuff, but I wouldn't be watching, all of freaking GFW on it. I mean, and it sounds good on paper, but come on, this is GFW. We know about empty promises, and so do the wrestlers and staff, for that matter. A lot of things that they say, oh, we promised this, and nothing. And then, of course, either nothing or it's forced on them. It's like, oh, you have to do this now. It's just, I don't know, how much can that PR team and legal team take? And how much can that company take? It amazes me. So that's going to do it here for the pilot episode, the first ever episode of Combat Mania. I want to thank you all for listening in. And hopefully you enjoyed all the little discussions and all my talk and my thoughts on everything going on in the world of combat sports. If you want more and want to follow us on social media, like and follow Combat Mania on Facebook, Twitter, and Periscope at Combat Mania UD. Go like my other podcast I do with Nick Federa on just other sports like baseball and football. This is the Unspoken Podcast at the UDUP on Facebook, Twitter, and Periscope. Like Nick's other show, Pop Culture, which is about nerd culture and comics and all that stuff, at Pop Culture UD on social media, like Unknown and Uncloned at UAU Podcast on Facebook, Twitter. Follow all the rest of the Undetermined Podcast Network accounts. And that's going to wrap things up here. So, I'm Tom Albano, and you have been listening to Combat Mania, Cheap Seat Sports Production, part of the Undetermined Podcast Network. We'll see you next time for episode number 2. Peace out, everybody.